Good morning, students. We'll continue with the topic photosynthesis in higher plants. In the previous chapter, we have studied what are the Jagdish? What is the definition of photosynthesis? What is the importance of photosynthesis? What are its significances? And what are the raw materials? In the raw materials, we have learnt the water, the carbon dioxide, light, and the chlorophyll pigments that are necessary for the process of photosynthesis. And by paper chromatography method, as we observed, it shows four types of pigments: chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and xanthophyll, and the carotenoids. So these four pigments, as we see in the paper chromatography experimental process, if you find out we get a graph, or we can identify the importance of these chlorophyll pigments in the process of photosynthesis by studying through the graph. If you observe the textbook in the graph with the figure 13.3a, yes, this is a graph where it depicts that there are three pigments: chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and the carotenoids. So here in the previously I had said that the absorbed light of wavelength of 360 to 760 nm in light. So in that, what is the absorption spectrum of each of the pigment is depicted in this graph. So in the first graph, this is a graph which implies the amount or the rate of photosynthesis. So the absorption spectrum, the light spectrum that is used for the process of photosynthesis, starts from 360 to 760 nanometers of wavelength of light. So in that, the chlorophyll A, it absorbs the wavelength of light at, or if you see this graph indicates there is maximum absorption of the wavelength of light at chlorophyll A. Here the chlorophyll A, which is indicated by a blue line, absorbs the wavelength of light of 430 nm and 662 nm of light. So in this, the blue indicates the chlorophyll A pigments which absorbs the wavelength of light is maximum at 430 nm and 662 nm. Then chlorophyll B. This chlorophyll B absorbs, or the rate of photosynthesis is peak at its highest level, which have the wavelength, absorbs the maximum, or the rate is maximum, which have the wavelength of absorption. They absorb the wavelength of light wavelength, that from 453 and 642 nm, while the carotenoids absorb the wavelength of light, that is 460 to 550 nm. So this graph indicates that the three pigments absorb according to that wavelength of light. But if you observe clearly, in this region and this, there are two peaks. In this, there are two peaks. The peaks are in the blue region and in the red region. So in the visible spectrum of light, if you take the seven colors: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red, in the seven colors, if you observe the seven colors, the maximum or the highest rate of photosynthesis occurs at the blue and the red region. See this graph. The carotenoids, the blue with chlorophyll A and the green with chlorophyll B. So this graph implies or indicates there is maximum absorption of light, or absorption of light. There is maximum highest rate of photosynthesis at the regions of blue and red. Chlorophyll A absorbs at highest wavelength of light 430 nm. It is in the blue blue region, while 662 nm is in the red region or spectrum of light. While chlorophyll, it is of 453 nm in the blue region of light and 642 nm in the red region of the light. While the carotenoids absorb 460 wavelength, at highest is at 462 and the other wavelength is 550. So this graph totally implies that the chlorophyll is maximally absorbs the wavelength of light. Chlorophyll A are the peculiar molecules which absorb highest wavelength of light, and in chlorophyll, by chlorophyll only, especially in the blue and the red regions, there is high level of or high rate of photosynthesis. So the blue and the red regions. So blue, if you take violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and the red. So here the blue region and the red region shows the highest level of photosynthesis, or we can say that the rate of photosynthesis is more in the visible spectrum at the blue and the red region. So as said earlier in the previous class, violet, blue and red are said to be as action spectrum which absorb particular wavelength of light, and at that regions only there is high level of rate of photosynthesis. In that the red region is of the highest with highest level of photosynthesis. Highest rate of photosynthesis you can be found in the red region. So it is regarded as an action spectrum. But in other places, if you just go with green and yellow, orange region, the graph indicates that is negligible rate of photosynthesis. Green, it is nothing. There is no photosynthesis as the light is reflected back. While in yellow and orange also there is very less amount of photosynthesis, rate of photosynthesis. While it is in the blue region and the red region with highest level of photosynthesis. So in 13.38 graph, it indicates that the chlorophyll A has maximum absorption of wavelength, and in that the peak is, or the highest rate of photosynthesis is in the blue and the red region. In the second graph, that is 13.3b, yes, this is a graph to show the wavelength at which maximum photosynthesis occurs in plants. So look into the graph in the textbook of the NCERT syllabus, page number with the page number there. So it shows that the wavelength at which maximum photosynthesis occurs by the chlorophyll molecule. So here where oxygen is being used. In this again it is the blue region and the red region where it is the maximum photosynthesis, rate of photosynthesis is. Then if you go with the third figure, that is 13.3 with the where you can see that the two spectrums are being overlapped with each other, where one spectrum indicates, there is indication of a spectrum of photosynthesis which depicts the rate of photosynthesis. At what rate there is increase in the rate of photosynthesis, and the other spectrum is the spectrum of chlorophyll A molecule. It is an overlap of it is a graph showing the overlap processes of both the spectrums, that is the rate at what point. Again it has been observed that in this the spectrum of photosynthesis and the spectrum of chlorophyll A at the blue and the red shows that at the red and the blue regions show highest rate of photosynthesis, maximum rate of photosynthesis in the red and the blue. Now the next question, this part of chlorophyll is over, that is the chlorophyll molecules, how they are being, what is the rate of photosynthesis by the chlorophyll molecules. Then we will go with the structure, where does this photosynthesis actually occurs. In cell, the unit of life, we have studied the structure of the chloroplast. We will recollect once again in order to understand, in order to know that process where the actual process of photosynthesis occurs. So here the leaves are said to be as the kitchen of the plants, where in the mesophyll tissue there are leaves. The leaves contains the upper epidermis, lower epidermis, stomata and the epidermal hairs along with the mesophyll tissues. The two mesophyll tissues, the mesophyll tissue in dicots can be differentiated as palassite cells and spongy cells, while in monocots it is having similar types of cells, it is homogeneous. While in dicots it is heterogeneous, there are palassite cells and spongy cells. So in the leaves between the upper and lower epidermis, there are set of cells. These upper and lower epidermis, there are set of parasite cells which are tightly arranged, and there is a vascular bundle with xylem and phloem and the spongy cells. Each of these cells, palassite and loosely arranged spongy cells, each of this cell along with the vacuole contain the chloroplast. Contain the chloroplast. In each and every cell, there can be around 20 to 30 chloroplast cells. This here it is depicted only chloroplast. So the plant cell has, along with the vacuoles, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi complex, the mitochondria and other organelles, have a special photosynthetic structures or photosynthetic organelles called as the chloroplast. We have already learned the structure of the chloroplast. Just we will remind with the structure what are the organelles or how they are involved, which are the parts of the chloroplast that are directly involved in the process of photosynthesis. So with that idea, we will start with the structure of the chloroplast. So these chloroplasts are discoid in shape with outer and inner membrane. Each of the chloroplast is discoid in shape. It is having an outer membrane, permeable, and inner membrane, impermeable, and here is periplastidial space. The structure of chloroplast. So the chloroplast is a double membrane organelle, discoid in shape, or we can say as dense shaped or convex in shape, with an outer membrane which is permeable, while in the inner membrane is impermeable, and the space between the two membranes is called as periplastidial space. Inside the chloroplast there are two main components, that is the grana and the stroma. So the granas are made up of around, number varies from 2 to 40 or 2 to 20 or the 10 to 15 number of each of this, the grana, and each of the chloroplasts can have around 10 to 15 granules or grana. By thread channels Inside the chloroplast there are two main components, that is the grana, which is a site of light reaction. It is a site of light reaction, and the component that are the fluid material or the matrix, where you can see the matrical parts. The matrix is the stroma, which is a site of dark reactions. So the chlorophyll is embedded, or it is containing two main components, that is the grana, the light reaction, and the stroma, which is site of dark reaction. We can see perfect division of labor in the chloroplast itself. It is an independent unit, and it is having its own mitochondria also, where it can replicate by itself. It has mitochondria and many number of ribosomes, and the grana are interconnected by stroma, lamella, or also called as thread channels. Stroma, lamella, or also called as the thread channels, along with stored reserve food material as starch, grains, and droplets. In this, the grana, it is made up of thylakoids which are placed one above the other like a pile of coins. Each of these are known as thylakoids. In each of these thylakoids have a membrane and a lumen. It is having a membrane and a lumen. And the photosynthetic pigments are found in the membrane of the thylakoids, where it includes this membrane has the four complexes: photosystem 2, photosystem 1, plastoquinone, cytochrome BF, and ATP synthetase. These are all embedded in the membrane of the thylakoids. In the thylakoids, you can see the four complexes in the thylakoid membrane. So here the grana contains the thylakoids which are placed one above the other, where it has the photosynthetic pigments. Actually, the thylakoids, each of these thylakoids have the quantasomes. Inside the membrane, there are quantasomes where the photosynthetic pigments, the chlorophyll and other accessory pigments are present. That in detail we will study in the future class. So here the process of photosynthesis, it occurs in the leaves. The leaves have a special structures called as chloroplast. The chloroplast, the number varies. In each of the cells. There can be around 20 to 30 chloroplasts in the mesophyll tissue of the leaves. But each and every chloroplast have the green color pigment chlorophyll, which have the ability to absorb. It absorbs the light energy. It have the ability to absorb the light or the solar energy, and it is involved in the synthesis of two main components, ATP and NADPH. So, as I said that there is division of flavor. Each and every organelle in the chloroplast plays an important role, especially the two reactions, that is the light reaction and the dark reaction. So, the membrane, the outer membrane and the inner membrane of the chloroplast is providing a particular shape to the chloroplast, and as the outer membrane is permeable and inner membrane is impermeable, does not allow any other external and unfavorable substances to enter into the cells. And between the outer and inner membrane there is periplastidial cells, which also helps in transferring the electrons from one complex to the other complex. And as I said, there are two components, grana and the stroma. The grana contains the thylakoids, which are placed one above the other like a pile of coins. The number varies from 2 to 10 or 10 to 20 in each of the grana. So these thylakoids have the special photosynthetic units or photosynthetic structures or the components that absorb the light. Those are called as the quantasomes. Inside there are photosynthetic units, and those are known as the quantasomes. And each of the quantasomes have the photosynthetic pigments, that is chlorophyll, A and other accessory pigments. Now, grana is said to be as the site of light reaction. These chlorophyll pigment, as they absorb the light and help to produce help in the synthesis of two main components, and this process occurs in the presence of light. The reaction that occurs in the grana in the presence of light with the synthesis of ATP and NADPH, that reaction in the presence of light is known as the light reaction. And each of the grana are interconnected by the connecting centers, or which connects the two granas are called as the stroma lamella or the Fred channels. These are interconnected, also help in transferring the electrons from the one grana to another grana. Then in this all granas, apart from that, the external material or external component to the grana is the stroma, where it is light independent reaction occurs. In this light independent, the stroma does not require the light but uses the energy or the components released by the grana for its process. Then along with that, there are starch grains which are involved in the physiological activities of the chloroplast, and there are 70S ribosomes. Already in ribosomes we have studied that there are two forms of ribosomes, that is 70S and 80S. 80S are usually present in the cytoplasm and they are cytoplasmic ribosomes. But there are some ribosomes which are present within the organelles. As mitochondria has the ribosomes, those ribosomes which are present internally inside the organelles, they are called as integral ribosomes or organelle ribosomes, and they are of 70S. 80S are cytoplasmic, which are present in the cytoplasm, while there are some ribosomes which are present inside the organelles. In mitochondria and chloroplast, there are ribosomes internally. Those ribosomes are of 70S types of ribosomes. So in chloroplast, you can find 70S ribosomes. Along with that, it is having its own mitochondria. With the help of this mitochondria, it is a self-replicating unit, or it can divide by itself, or does not take the advantage or does not depend upon the process of cell division. According to the requirement, according to the metabolic activities or the physiological actions, it can undergo the process of multiple fusion or doubling, or it can undergo its own copy or formation. It can divide by itself with the help of mitochondria. And there are even the lipid droplets present in the chloroplast. So this structure of chloroplast, in the chloroplast, especially in the thylakoid membranes, there are four complexes: photosystem 2, photosystem 1 with cytochrome BF and the ATPase with plastophenol, plastocyanin and other. These are all the complex protein complexes which have the ability or which trap the light energy and produces the energy components. That energy components which overall with the reaction of the photosynthesis. So if you go with the reaction centers, the reaction centers where maximum chlorophyll pigments are present are photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. So in the next class we will go with, in this we have studied the structure of the chloroplast and the thylakoid membrane. This takes a little more explanation where you have to know what are quantosomes, how are the photosynthetic pigments arranged in the quantosomes, and or we will refer to the photosynthetic systems, that is the photosystem 1 and 2, how they are and different protein complexes that are directly involved in the process of photosynthesis. So in this today's class, there are likely questions of what is the structure of a chloroplast, which is a 5 marks question where you have to draw the diagram and explain the structure of the chloroplast. And what is the definition of? There are two definitions. That is the light reaction. There are two definitions. What is light reaction and dark reaction? So in this class we go through the graph properly, which can be asked for NEET and CET questions purposes, while the questions for this are 1 mark questions. What is light reaction, what is dark reaction, and a 5 marks question, what is the explain the structure of the chloroplast. If by explaining the structure of chloroplast, explanation carries 3, totally it is for 5 marks, explanation for 3 marks, and the diagram is compulsory 2 marks diagram with the labels, perfect labels. You can follow the textbook and draw the diagram. So in the next class, we will see the complete study of thylakoids, how the photosynthetic pigments, how are they arranged in the thylakoids, and the components in the membrane, photosystem 1, photosystem 2, and how they are being involved in the process of photosynthesis. So the two main reaction centers or the structures in the chloroplast is the grana and the stroma, where light reactions and dark reactions. Then we will start with light reaction, then later on with the dark reactions. So practice the diagram. The 5 marks question is the structure of the chloroplast and definitions of what is light reaction and the dark reaction. So tomorrow, next class, we will deal with the photosystem 1 and photosystem 2, cyclic and non-cyclic phosphorylation process of photosynthesis.